Hello and welcome to the channel. So for today's tutorial, we'll be drafting a monostrap shoulder corset. So I've gone ahead and I've marked my vertical measurements, which is my shoulder to bust, my shoulder to under bust, my shoulder to half length or waist length, and then my top length. So my top length is just 2 inches away from my navel or waist length. So the reason why I added these 2 inches below is to give this corset a semi-inbuilt corset look. So you can as well stop your measurement at the waist length. So the next thing I'm going to do after here is just to place my tape and mark my shoulder, the shoulder I'm working with. So the shoulder I'm working with divided by 2, I have 16 and I have divided by 2, and I'll go ahead and place it at the upper part, and I'm going to mark my shoulder. From that point I marked my shoulder, I'll place my tape and I'll come down by 1 inch. From that 1 inch I marked, I'll be placing my tape and I'm going to draw a shoulder slant. Next, I'll be marking my chest line or my armhole line. So to get your chest line is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inch. So I'll mark it there and I'm going to place my rule and I will draw a straight line. Next, I'm going to place my tape at my chest line and I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2 that I marked upwards, and I'm going to connect, drawing a straight line. I'll extend the line to the chest line and I'll extend my chest line out. After I'm done extending it, I'll mark that point as my chest line. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place back my tape at my chest line, and I'm going to mark my bust circumference, the bust circumference I'm working with, divided by 4. So the reason why I'm doing this is that I don't want my armhole to exceed more than my chest line. Sorry, my bust line or my bust circumference. So after that, I'm going to divide what I have at my chest line into 2, and I'm going to mark it. After marking what I have, I'll go ahead and I will go in by ½ inch on that point that I made. After marking out the line, I'm going to place my French curve and I will connect it to the upper part of my armhole, and then I'll connect it downwards, forming the armhole curve. After that, the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my bust span, which is my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So I'm going to mark the bust span I'm working with at the chest line. After marking it at the chest line, I'm going to go down and mark it at the bust line. Then after marking it at the bust line, I'll go down and mark it at the under bust. I'll also go to the navel or waistline and mark it, and then down to the top length, and I'm going to mark the bust span. Next, after doing that, I'll just place my rule and I'm going to connect, drawing a straight line. The next step is to mark your dart intake. So for this corset, I'll just be using ½ inch for my dart intake. The reason why I'm using half is that I won't be cutting off the dart at the bust line. If you notice the corset has no cutting or dart at the bust area, so it's more like a shoulder corset connecting to the bust. So I'll mark my ½ inch. I'll mark ½ inch at the top length, half length, and at the under bust. After marking that, I'll place a ruler and I'm going to draw a straight line connecting it. After drawing it out, I'll go ahead and take my marker and I'll outline the lines that I have at that point so that it will be very visible for you to see. After outlining, I'm going to connect it back to my bust point. So I'm going to be doing so for the both sides of the darts. Next, I'll take my marker and I'll outline my armhole, connecting it to my chest line, and then I'm going to extend the line I have at that point. After doing this, the next thing I'm going to mark is my neck depth and neck width. So I'll be making use of a standard neck depth and neck width, which is 3 inches by 3, and I'm going to just place my French curve and connect the dots or the lines that I marked at that place, and my neckline is ready. Next, I'm going to place my tape at my bust line, and I'm going to take the measurement from my bust to my under bust, and I'm going to extend it round. So the reason why I'm doing this is just for reference purposes, but I won't really be making use of the marks that I made or I'm marking at this point. So while making the marks, I'll do that gently and make sure I don't exceed the measurement I have from my bust to my under bust. And I also do that forming a circle round. So the lines might not be very visible to you because I'm making use of a pencil and I'm making a very light dot, because like I said, it is a reference point, not like I'm going to make use of it really. After marking that, I'll place my tape at my chest line and I will go down by half, and at that ½ inch I'm going to come in by half and I'm going to mark. After marking out the line at that point, the next step I'm going to take is to take my French curve right now, and I'm going to place my French curve and I will draw a line connecting from that ½ inch I came in down to my under bust line. So after drawing the line, this is what I have at this point. Next, I'll take my tape and I'm going to place it at my chest line. So at that point, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. The bust circumference I'm working with, divided by 4. And then from that point, from my chest line, I'm going to go in by 1 inch. Now, there are 3 methods of doing this. It's either you go in by 1 inch, or you go in by 1.5 if you want your cup to be fitted, or you measure the distance you have there and divide it by 2. So I came in by 1 inch from the chest line, and I'm going to place my French curve this way, and I'm going to connect, drawing a cup. Right now, the cup area of the corset is ready, and this is what I have. So after doing this, the next thing you're going to be working with or working for is the shoulder. So I'm going to measure what I have left at that point in my shoulder. So at the shoulder point, I'm going to be going in by ½ inch. So the reason why I'm doing this is to make that shoulder part to be a bit smaller and to create that little curve you have at that armhole side, at the shoulder side, So after marking that ½ inch, I'll go back and place my tape from that ½ inch and measure what I have. So I'll be dividing what I have into 2 and I'm going to mark. So I have 4.6 at that point. What I'm going to mark, starting from that ½ inch I already marked, I'll be marking 2.3 inches at that point. So from that 2.3 inches mark, I'll make a tiny dot just to sketch or see what the sketch will be like. So after that, I'll take my ruler and I'll connect it down to my cup area up, and I will blend in the line at that point. So after blending in this part, I'll go back to that ½ inch I marked at the shoulder. So from that point, I'm going to blend it in into the armhole. Just like I said earlier, at this point, I'm just trying to create a curve and to make that armhole area look exactly like the picture at the thumbnail. So I'll just draw out the line with my pencils first. After drawing out the line, I'm going to take my French curve and I will connect the line. So with that, we are done drafting one side of the cup. So we'll move to the other side, but before I do that, I'll place my tape at my bust and I will insert my bust circumference, sorry, the bust circumference I'm working with, the under bust circumference I'm working with, and the half length and so on. So let's go back. I placed my tape at the bust and I'm going to mark the bust circumference plus 2 inches that intake. Then going down to the under bust, I'm going to place the tape there and I'm going to mark the under bust circumference divided by 4. After marking that, I'm going to measure the dart intake we have. So the dart intake at this point is 1 inch because we marked half inch at both sides, and I'm going to replace the dart. After replacing the dart, I'm going to add 2 inches allowance just like I added at the bust area. Then I'll go down to the waist length or the half length and I'm going to insert the waist circumference. But before inserting my waist circumference, I'll be snatching 1.5 inch from there. So what I'll just do is to minus 1.5 inch from the original measurement I have. After minusing it from there, if your navel is 35, you minus 1.5 inch from there. So whatever you have left, you're going to divide it by 4 inches, and that is what I did exactly. After dividing it, I'm going to mark it at that point. So after marking it, I'm going to measure the dart intake, which is half on both sides, and I'm going to replace it half on both sides, which is 1 inch, and I will replace it at my waist length. After replacing the dart intake, I'm going to mark 2 inches for my allowance. So whatever I have at my navel, I'm going to take it down to my top length. The reason is this: my top length is just 2 inches away from my navel. If your top length is closer to your hip, so you're going to mark your hip circumference divided by 4, and you are going to mark your dart intake. So after doing this, I'll just place my tape and I will connect the lines that I marked earlier, and I will outline it with my marker. After outlining my lines, I'm going to take my scissors and I'll cut out what I have. So note, everybody's shape or body size or shape is different, so you mustn't get the same shape that I have. So depending on the body type or shape you have, that's what you'll be having on your pattern. And also, while cutting, please watch carefully what I'm cutting out so that you won't cut out the wrong side of your pattern. So next, I'll place my tape at that point and I'm going to mark 1 inch. So if your top is actually longer than this, you can go ahead and mark 2.5 inches or 2 inches at that point, and you can connect your line. After connecting my line, I'm going to cut out that part. Next, after cutting out, I'm going to unpin my pattern and I will open what I have done so far. So this is it. After working on this side, I'm also going to work on this side of the cup, and the hand will be extending to that other side since it's a monostrap. So I'll go ahead and I will fold back my pattern. The next thing I'm going to do is to use my tracing wheel to trace out the cup at this point. And while tracing your cup, you should be careful in order not to trace a different shape from what you have at this side. So after tracing it out, I'm going to flip open my pattern to see if what I have traced is okay. I'll fold back my pattern. Afterwards, I'm going to trace out my chest line so that I will know where my cup started. After tracing out the lines, the next thing I'll do is to flip open my pattern, and I'll take my pencil and then marker and I'm going to outline the line. I'll outline my chest line and I will go ahead and I will also outline the cup area that I traced out. So sorry that my lines are a bit faint. I'm working with a pencil. That's the reason why. And I'll be outlining my cups later. The reason why I'm not outlining it now is just not to avoid outlining unnecessary areas that I won't be working with. So the next step right now is to create a shoulder for the other part of the corset, which I will be slanting towards the other shoulder too. I also traced out the nipple to nipple line at this part also. So I'll measure the distance from my bust to my under bust, and I'm also going to place my tape at this point and then take that measurement upwards, and I'm going to mark. So if you don't want to do this, you can measure 1.5 inches up from your chest line, which puts me here. So from the center point, I'm just going to go up by 1 inch. The reason why we're doing this is we're trying to create that slant at this point. After marking the 1 inch, I'm just going to slant it inwards. Then moving over is to draw the hand. So I'm going to measure ½ inch away from the other hand, and I'll place my I'll place my ruler, and I'm going to connect it to that slant that I made at that point. After connecting it, this is what I have. I'll place back my tape on top and I'll measure what I have left there. So I won't be marking exactly what I have there. I'll mark 1.5 because the hand is a bit slimmer at that point. So I'm just going to mark a little dot, invisible line, just to see how the sketch will turn out before I'll go ahead and I will connect the line at that point. Next, I'll place my ruler at that 1.5 inch mark, and I'm going to connect it with the lines or dots that I made earlier. So for now, I'm going to stop at this point. So the next step you're going to take is at this mark you made here, you'll be connecting it to this 1.5 inch. Remember, we marked 1.5 inch, or you mark your shoulder to bust line at that point. So what you're going to do is you're also going to mark 1 inch here, and then you're going to connect what you have to that point. After connecting, you're just going to blend in your line so that it matches. So the reason why we are drawing this part actually is to know where to join the sleeve at the other point. So from this center point, I'm going to connect it or blend it back to the armhole line, to that 1 inch I marked at that point. So this is what I have. So after blending in the line, you're just going to check if what you have is okay. So I just mark a little line above it because I noticed I don't really have the shape that I want. So I'll just mark a little line and I'm going to blend in. So the next thing you're going to do is to connect that line from that point, and you're going to blend it back into the cup that you've already drawn. So it will be giving it that shape at this point. I'll just go ahead and I will blend in my lines very well. After blending out my lines, the next thing I'm going to do is to take my marker and I'll outline the necessary points. I'm going to outline my cup and the sleeve parts and other parts of this corset. So also, if you notice in this corset, there's no dart at the upper part of the corset. So I won't be cutting through or outlining the dart at the cup side. Even when I'm cutting my pattern, I won't be dividing the cup. But if you like to have the little gathers effect under the cup, you're just going to slash your cup a bit and you're going to spread it little. That's just it. But there's no dart running through the corset cup area. So please, at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, like, share and subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. And also for my returning subscribers, thank you for always supporting my channel and always viewing my videos. I really appreciate your effort towards my channel. And don't also forget to turn on your notification button to get updates when I upload on my channel. And also leave your comment or drop your comment at the comment section. So while outlining your armhole, you should outline the second one. That will be the one you'll be working with. So at this part, I will still extend the hand upwards because the hand at the back is just a straight line connected to the chest line. So I'll go ahead and I will extend it to that point. And also when I'm placing my pattern and I'm transferring it, I'll be adding about 7 to 10 inches for the back sleeve or the back hand, because it extended down to the chest line area, but depending on how low you want your back to be. So at this part of the cup, I went up a bit at that part. I'm just going to blend in the line that I marked out there, and this is just it for the pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do is to cut out my pattern. So at this point, I would like you to pay attention on how I cut out my pattern. If not, you can mistakenly cut out the part that, or mistakenly cut out the other part of the cup. So just like I said earlier, I won't be cutting out the darts in the line. Instead, if you want to make that little slash at the bust, you can just slash your cup area while slash and spread it a little while transferring your pattern. So be careful while cutting the sleeve area also, because one side of the sleeve is a normal sleeve and then the other side is a monostrap crossing over to the other shoulder. So while cutting, remember to label your pattern so that you will not misplace it for the other one also. So I'm done cutting, and this is what I have. This is what my pattern looks like. So the next thing we are going to do now is also to draft the back. So as you can see, the back is very simple. There is nothing much going on at the back. So coming over to my back, so I'll be drafting my back pattern and I'll be starting at my chest line, because the pattern at the front side ended or blended into the chest line. So I'll be starting from the chest line. From that chest line, I placed my tape. The chest line I'm working with is 7.5. So I placed the tape and I marked shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to half length, and I added 2 inches for the top. So for my back pattern, I did not include a zipper allowance. The reason why is that we'll be making a lacing bar at this point. So if you want to add a zipper to yours, you can just add a zipper allowance to your pattern. So if you've been watching my video, you notice that my back pattern is usually very simple. So from that point, I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to mark the bust pan or nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'm going to mark it from the beginning of the pattern to the end of the pattern. And later I'm just going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect, drawing a straight line. So the next step is to mark my dart intake. So for this pattern, I'll be making use of 1/2 inch, and I'm going to mark it at the top length, the half length or waist length, the under bust, and then I'm going to stop there. So from there, I'll place my tape and connect it to from my under bust to my top length, and then from that underbust, I'm going to slant it to my chest line area, and I'm going to do the same at the other side of my pattern too. Then I'll go ahead, place my ruler, and I'll outline it with my marker. After outlining that, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to inserting my horizontal measurement. That's my body circumference. At the bust, I'm going to mark the bust I'm working with divided by 4, and I'm going to be adding my sewing allowance, my 2 inches sewing allowance. After marking my 2 inches sewing allowance, I'm just going to measure the little that I have at that point, and I'm going to mark. Then coming over to the underbust, you're going to place your underbust circumference divided by 4, and you're going to add the 2 inches sewing allowance. After marking your 2 inches sewing allowance, you're going to measure the dart intake at that point, which is half inch, giving you 1 inch, and you're going to mark. At the half length, you're going to place your waist circumference divided by 4, and you're going to mark. After marking that, you're going to mark the dart intake at that point. After marking the dart intake at that point, you're also going to add your sewing allowance. So whatever you have at your navel, you're going to take it down to your top length. Just like I said before, the reason why I'm placing my waist measurement down is just that it's 2 inches lower than my half length. So if it's close to your hip point, you're going to insert your hip measurement there. Next, I'll connect the lines that I've made from my bust downwards to the top length, or from my chest line downwards to the top length. So note, whatever you have at your bust line, that's what you're going to be extending to your chest line. Please, sorry for the noise at the background. So after this, you're just going to cut out what you have. After cutting out my pattern, I noticed I omitted a step. At my top length, I'm going to go up by ½ inch, just like we did in the front. But for the front, we went up by ½ inch and we used a French curve to connect, making a curve. But in this case, I'm going to mark the ½ inch all through, and I'm going to cut out. So the reason why I'm doing this is that I prefer my back to be a bit higher than my front pattern. After marking out those lines, I'm just going to cut out that part. So I'll place my tape at this part, and I'm going to measure 2 inches from there. So why I'm measuring 2 inches is that I want to give a space at the back for my lacing bar. I want to have a space in between my lacing bar. So you can take out 1.5 or 2 inches, but I'm taking out 2 inches. So after marking that 2 inches, I'm just going to connect and draw a line. So after drawing that line, I'll place back my tape, and I'm going to mark ½ inch for joining allowance in front. After marking it, I'm going to connect it, drawing a straight line, and I'll go ahead and I will cut out that part. After cutting it, I'll go ahead and I'll cut out my dart at the center. So after cutting out my dart, you go ahead and mark ½ inch down, which you'll be marking out the puff to get rid of the puff at the back of your dress, and then you're going to label your pattern so that you will not misplace what you have. So my back pattern is ready. So with this, we have come to the end of this drafting tutorial. So if you find this video interesting and educative, please like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification button to get new updates from my channel.